Well, good evening. Thank you for joining livebordernews.com. I'm your host, Johnathon Alexander. And tonight we have Kaysha Richardson, Lauren Cupp, and Richardson. Sorry about that, Richard. It's an honor to have you here on our show tonight.
Thank you. It's actually Dale. Last name's Richardson. It's all good.
Sorry about that, Dale.
No worries.
Okay. So we were discussing back in Las Vegas, Kaysha, about the human trafficking. We didn't have a lot of time to really go into depth on it. And I'd like for you tonight to really explain to our audience exactly what happened to you.
Yes, thank you, Sir Jonathan, for having us back on the show. My name is Kaysha Richardson, and so I'm an American Indian. I was born in Canada. I'm sovereign on both sides of the border. I actually worked for a maximum security prison for the criminally insane for the provincial government in Saskatchewan, Canada. My father there, Dale, he's a mechanical engineer, and he pioneered some research in early 2020 exposing improper contagion mitigation, which he'll get into. And I used that research to file official OH&S complaints, which is the same as OSHA laws here in the United States. And we were persecuted and tortured as a result of putting out that research. As soon as my father put it out and made it known to the various agencies of what was going on, the first response was to steal my 16-month-old sister, Karis. We haven't seen her in 3 years. She's 4 now. Then we were kidnapped by the rogue members of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in front of the Court of Queen's Bench, now King's Bench, in Battleford, Saskatchewan, in which the sheriffs assisted arresting us, kidnapping and arresting us in front of there, and took us away. I was actually taken to the same hospital my dad was at initially, and interrogated all day by 6 or 7 male officers about my father's corporation and the things that he was doing with the research and, the court hearing and why we were going to court that day. And I was like, well, I'm not an engineer. I can't explain engineering to you. And so I was like, can't really help you. And they threatened that if I didn't do what they asked me to do, take a COVID test and answer their questions and all these things, then if something happened to me on the way to whatever facility they took me to, they wouldn't be able to protect me. They said they put me in jail with criminals out of province, and so they eventually ended up taking me to my place of employment. They emptied an entire wing of the prison and held me there by myself. Locked me in a small room for 23 hours a day, didn't clothe me or feed me properly. I wasn't able to speak to anyone in my family, not even my spouse at the time. And nobody knew where I was. My grandmother had to continuously call the RCMP asking to file a missing persons report, and they refused. And she said, well, you drove off with her. Did you kidnap her? And they said, no, we don't know where she is. We tested her for COVID and let her go. She'll be back with you in a couple of days. And sure enough, my grandmother kept calling, and eventually they ended up letting me out. My father was in another facility being tortured and strapped to a table and drugged against his will while all this was going on. And once I left the facility, I ended up getting sexually assaulted by somebody who claimed to come to help us initially. But eventually I ended up having to flee to the United States for safety as an American Indian. It should have been safer for me, as like I said, I'm sovereign on both sides of the border. And I came on October 1st, 2020 to Montana Sweetgrass Port of Entry with my father's research outlining everything that happened, including evidence of our persecution and torture by rogue members in the government. The border agents threatened to put me in prison if I didn't go back to Canada, and asked me if I was afraid. And I told them I was persecuted. So yes, I feared to go back. And they took all my travel documents, detained me, tried to destroy the travel documents, and gave me over to immigration. Immigration drove me from the border, which Montana Sweetgrass Port of Entry is my ancestral homeland as well. They drove me all the way to Arizona Mexican border with Mexicans that they were going to deport. However, we didn't end up approaching. We ended up going backwards to Crump, Nevada, where they took me to a maximum security prison for military and immigration detainees. I spent 7 months there, and I was paroled on March 31st, 2021. However, while I was there, I followed all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States, the Ninth Circuit of California, and the District Court of Nevada. All of them ignored my travel documents, and Canada, the Canadian government, wrote a letter to immigration and DHS because they tried to deport me many times to Canada, but it's illegal to deport American Indians on both sides of the border. So Canada said, we will not receive her. She's American Indian. Why? She's in immigration detention anyways. I have no crimes or convictions in any country in the world, not even a speeding ticket, and I worked for a very vulnerable sector of the government. So they were like, this doesn't make sense, release her. So finally I was paroled, but immigration put me in a American supervisor program for meaning I had to live with Americans that they paroled me to, that they approved me to live with. I was in a tracking surveillance system, as well as I was not allowed to leave the city or my home at certain time of the day, or without permission. As well as I was not allowed to work without permission. The people that they paroled me to ended up trafficking me, drugging me, raping me, beating me, holding me at gunpoint in various states across the United States. I received no victim services or help. There's video, audio, confessions even of the crimes, and the people have even been charged and arrested, and still I have not received any assistance, legal assistance, or protection for what has gone on. All of this was done to suppress the evidence that my father had that outlined the election interference and bioterrorism in Canada and the United States, as well as ultimately treason, which of course benefited the Biden administration and mostly was done under the Biden administration. And so I'm currently right now still working towards trying to get freedom from this situation of being a victim of trafficking. I've been completely made desolate in the situation, deprived of my home, my car, my family, my job, having to go place to place requesting assistance and nothing. And we eventually came across Lauren, who had a situation similar to ours, and had her on our show. I tried to go into court with her to be a witness to some of the events that had gone on with the trafficking of her and her children. And the judge tried to threaten us in the court and criminally intimidate us, in which I ended up having to call the police in the court to tell the police that I'm an American Indian, a victim of human trafficking, and Lauren and her children are victims as well of the trafficking, and we need protection. And same judge that was presiding over the family matter presided over the criminal matter, and locked us out of the court for the next day in the criminal matter hearing. And the same things that we experienced with the court these last couple of years, I'm watching Lauren and her children, her family, go through the exact same thing now.
Wow. So, and boy, for you, everything that you have been through is just amazing that you're standing this strong. I mean, just what's happened to you is hard to believe.
Thank you, sir. I would say it's only by the grace of God and my father, of course, because
Amen.
we're Christians, and God is the one that keeps us no matter what. And my father, he's helped me along this way so much, even though he's all the way in Canada. No matter what I'm dealing with, he always stands as much in front of me and behind me as possible to make sure I get the protection I need. I've had 6 or 7 officers run away from me screaming, pretty much just from speaking to my dad about the treason and what's going on. So, I really hope that more men stand up going forward. I'm glad that he's here to help Lauren too, because the things that I'm watching her go through with her children are absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, just what both of you have been through is just incredible. I mean, just your story and just what we've looked over with what you've sent to us, and I've got a gentleman that we've been speaking with. We're not going to bring his name up on here tonight, but just what he reviewed in your cases as well is just unbelievable. And for you, Dale, I can't imagine what you've been through as a father, witnessing this yourself and what was taking place.
I wouldn't wish it to my worst enemy, because what they did was extremely disgusting. What I uncovered, and the reason why they went so hard, is because of what I uncovered. Like, there's a delivery system for a biological weapon that can be made to look like a random outbreak. This was what was done, and what I uncovered with engineering controls. And because engineering is an applied science, when you see a formula for engineering, it's because it represents something that exists and it works. And the government actually came with a theory that didn't work, and they had nothing to back it up. So they would be dead in the water trying to actually do anything. And it doesn't matter whether you change it or not. Like, you have to have the justifications. They didn't do anything. They actually just took half of it, slapped it out there, and said, use it. So things will work. You can turn on your system, but you don't have it set right. So you create a bunch of unknown failures and an unknown number of systems that you can't account for. It's impossible. And so when you distribute a biological weapon, the delivery of it seems like there's random outbreaks. That's exactly what you would get. And so when I presented this, the response was to steal my 16-month-old daughter and to torture me and my other daughter. And then on the first appearance, the house I was living on, they gave it away, the corporation's assets, intellectual property. They wanted to do away with the research. They strapped me to a bed and they drugged me against my will and interrogated me. And the people who I were reporting for the crime and the RCMP who should have been investigating it, they actually also were involved in the torture. The judge and the court directed them to keep me out. The medical record said I got brought in the day before, so there was an element of conspiracy to grab me the day before, which they failed to do.
Right.
When they showed up on my door, I filmed it and I served them the documents that they were evading service on. And so then they came in there, they arrested us. And then we had that guy who was supposed to be somebody who I met through church that was supposed to help. Instead, he was raping my daughter when I was strapped to a bed and drugged against my will. I didn't find this out until much later, and so he tried to pressure me after my daughter got out when I went to the border, because, I mean, the RCMP sent to the court evidence that they tortured me, saying that I shouldn't get relief from torture. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm leaving. So I left.
Hey, Dale,
Yes.
when you're saying they, would you clarify to our audience who they are?
Okay. So we have the Saskatchewan Health Authority, who's a provincial health authority. There's the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. There's the Court of King's Bench. There's some people in the community, like the lawyers that were involved for my ex, and for the ones that were involved in the cases that the corporation was suing people. So then you had some agents from the Innovation Credit Union who were involved because there was a non-disclosure agreement based on the information that they'd breached of contract, and the corporation was suing for the failure to investigate the torturing of individuals, because there was 2 torture complaints already existing that my ex and other people were implicated in previously, and the response was more torture. Also, the federal government had involvement in it because they had knowledge of it. And for the RCMP to do what they did, they would have to have protection from way up the chain to like do what they did. And then the elements of the provincial government, like, I mean, literally through the documentation, there's hundreds of people listed by name. And so I say they because of, I don't want to spend an hour listing every person, but this ties to the prime minister, and it has ties to Joe Biden directly.
Yeah, it sounds like the corruption goes to the highest extent here.
Yes,
Absolutely.
and so when I came along with that, they were like, no way, because if they had investigated, they would be obligated to tell the Americans based on the treaties. Then they would have to shut down the COVID pandemic response no later than July 23rd or July 3rd of 2020, because they'd have to explain why they have a distribution system for a biological weapon existing in Canada and the United States, and that's the justification that they're using to shut you down and to close your businesses, and then after that, forcing you to have those vaccines. So when I went across the border, the same guy that took my daughter across, he was trying to pressure me to go by myself. I said no. I ended up, same thing happening. I got arrested, presented my Canadian passport that was valid for 10 years. They actually said that I was there the day before, which I wasn't. But they treated me like I was undocumented. I was like threatened with federal prison to give up my passport for a travel document. They took me to the state of Colorado. I was tortured in Colorado, was deprived of due process. I had an immigration hearing. DHS didn't even show up. And the judge ruled in their favor, refused to take my evidence. He told me he didn't have the jurisdiction to deal with evidence of treason. I'm like, you're an American citizen. And he was like, too bad. And he didn't even hear what I had to say. Told me to get the evidence to the courtroom. I left it there. I told them there. The staff were trying to coerce me in the facility not to bring my evidence to court. And they were trying to block me from filing in court. I filed in the District Court of Colorado, the Court of Appeal for the 10th Circuit, all the way to the Supreme Court as well. And you're seeing the same type of playbook going on. And actually, I was there filing this information in the district court while the feds were sacking Tina Peters in Colorado for the election fraud, when the documents that I demonstrated is that COVID was the means by which they could do the election fraud on such a massive scale, because they used it to shut things down by unleashing a biological weapon. And then they used the second stage, which is the vaccines. And then they're going to go back and use it again. And then the judge in South Carolina concealed it when we filed in South Carolina, after the dude put the gun to my daughter's head. And then his father threatened me, called me in Canada and threatened me and threatened my daughter. And they wouldn't investigate, because that was the FBI supposed to do that, because he called me from the state of Georgia, and they were in South Carolina. And so I filed in there, and the judge actually said he had over 4,000 pages of evidence and audio and video evidence alleging election fraud. And this was on October 25th of 2022, right before the midterms. So what did she do? She had 5 days by law to hear the petition and deal with it. She waits 275 days. And then now, through all this time, my daughter is being chased from state to state by the people who are trafficking her. And then now people are now all getting together on Twitter and social media, coming after both me and my daughter. And when I was in Colorado, I was wiped out financially in Canada, and what little I had left, I was wiped out even more in the state of Colorado while I was being tortured, so that I couldn't help my daughter. And I had to sit there and watch her being trafficked while I'm trying to fight for my other daughter, who's being left around pedophiles, because her cousins are acting out, because one of the kids was trying to stick his penis in the mouth of the other one, and they were 4. And that tells me that somebody did something wrong to them. And so I got to worry about my daughter being raped and trying to get her, and I'd be given no contact, because I was strapped to a table when all this was going on, and trying to keep myself alive at the same time. So this is disgusting. But I was able to track everything that they did in the court. And I did statistical analysis on 3 different courts, and demonstrated by the same pattern of events that they were all acting in the same manner. And I used basic statistics that you can't manipulate. And so I put this all in a report, and showing that when you had the engineering report, which outlined the treason and the human trafficking and child trafficking, this was what happened. And whenever I see cases where you have either or both of them, you see the same pattern of events. So then I took some information from a lawyer who exposed a cartel that was in Arizona that was doing this child trafficking. He had the same pattern of events. Now, I had some of the January 6ers that were there at the Capitol, and I looked at their cases, same pattern of events. Now I take Lauren's case. She exposed 2 child sex trafficking rings, same pattern of events. So now Kaysha goes with Lauren to the FBI using the information, saying, listen, you got to investigate. These pattern of events are identical, and this strengthens the case. They go in and report it. They also take it to the Boone County Sheriff's Office, and report it there locally, because it's also state level treason, and the trafficking is taking place there.
Dale,
So
if you don't mind my asking, what did the FBI do? Did they even investigate it, or did they do what the FBI does best?
They did what the FBI did, right?
Yeah,
They even actually in South Carolina, they directed her to go back to Austin so that Kaysha to be sexually assaulted again, right? Like, I mean, this is unbelievable.
Right.
But
well,
now
this is something I've been exposing a lot of, especially down here on the borders. So human trafficking is happening every day. The federal government, after our research and investigation work we've done down on the border, our government is actually helping fund it. That they're assisting in the trafficking, everything in the book. And that's why I had to ask you what was the FBI doing? Because I can't believe for a second the FBI would even do diddly squat for you guys.
No, they wouldn't. The point is that now giving it to the FBI, it opens another lot of can of worms that you can use legally under the law by giving it to them. Right. But when Lauren and Kaysha went in together to report this, like the level of retaliation just skyrocketed. Like the judge lost her mind. I told the police exactly what the judge was going to do before she did it, and the judge did exactly everything that was said because it matched everything that was going on. And that tells me that judge also herself was involved in the human trafficking, and she's a traitor. Like, I mean, the systematic nature and the way that the government is involved in the domestic human trafficking, which looks a lot different than what they're bringing across the border, because it's primarily done through the court system, in itself is treason, because they're using it to destroy the people. They're breaking the backs of the people. They're destroying the ability of the Americans to resist. So all those fighting age men that they're bringing across the border, that the family's going to be too broken to resist when they come in and start destroying them and taking it over. And the whole whack of guys that they're bringing, like Chinese that they're bringing to Canada and God knows who else, they're waiting on the northern border to just come across when they create the chaos over there. And we don't want this. Like, you guys don't want this. Like, no.
Oh, exactly. Right now, we've got over 150 different countries pouring through our borders. And from my understanding, Canada's got the same problem. Not to mention now they're starting to come through the Canadian border right into the U.S. as well.
Yes, because you guys can't defend that border. It's too long. It's insane.
Yep.
Like they brought they brought over 1 million people into Canada this year, and it's not even over. Canada's only got like 40 million people. Like 1 million just immigrant. Just, are you crazy? Like, that's 2.5% of your population that you just increased in the matter of like 8 months. Like, you're insane. We can't afford it.
They're saying we're going to have roughly a little over 10 million just this year alone that's entered the U.S. by the end of this year now. That's how many have come through the borders already. We're already up into the millions, but they're predicting it's going to be at least 10 million by December.
And we're paying for this.
And we're paying for it. You know, Kaysha, my hat's off to you just for everything that you've been through as well. I mean, just, you know, not just your father, but you. I mean, I can't even imagine. I see it every day. I can only tell you how I know I react if that was my daughter and something like that happened. And I can tell you that right now, chances are I probably wouldn't be around. They would have locked me away for life after I get done doing what I was going to do. Because this has gotten to the point to where we have seen and witnessed so much human trafficking and how they do it, how the government does not defend you as a victim, but they're actually assisting with the problem.
I mean, I do a lot of praying to Jesus, I ain't gonna lie. Like, I mean, but I understand also that me, myself, couldn't do as much, but in the hands of the people, it'll do a lot. right? And
Amen.
and
Yes.
that's really what God wants this to be done, because this is to help the people. Because anybody who's being affected by COVID, being affected by trafficking, the filth going on in schools, because COVID just increased everything. It's all tied together as treason. And you have Article 3, Section 3 of the Constitution that gives the right of treason investigations actually belongs to the people. When the FBI shuts them out, they're actually committing treason because it's written in the Constitution, and that says we the people. And no judge, no court, nobody can stop them. There's only one right response when it comes to that, and that's we will investigate. Because if they had, the founding fathers, they weren't dumb. They were very smart men. Why? That's why they defined it in the Constitution, so that the right of that and investigation of that belongs to the people, because they were dealing with the King of England, and they were watching what they were doing here in Canada and what they did in the colonies. So they didn't want that to happen. That's why that crime is listed in the Constitution. It belongs to the people for them to say, we want that investigation, not any branch of the government, not any law enforcement. They're supposed to do what the people ask. And this is why the people have to go ahead and push them until they do. Right? And there's a lot of lawful means to get those people out. And I want the people to understand that and to ram it down their throats until they get what they need. And that's the Republic back.
Yep. Well, our forefathers knew this day was going to arise, and that's why the Constitution was written, and written with a lot of blood, actually, that was poured for us, we the people. Lauren, would you mind sharing with the audience just a little bit of what's gone on with you?
You muted.
You're muted, Lauren.
Sorry, I'm Lauren Cupp. I was born and raised in Indiana. My daughter was molested for 6 years. She has an active protective order. The man violated it on 10/15 of 2022. And then the wife of the child molester actually spit in my face. The police recommended no charges be filed due to the history of the protective order. And they also did not take the report for the violation for them filming my minor child and my nephew that's on the protective order as well. So then I get a phone call 16 days later saying, Lauren, you've got a misdemeanor warrant out for your arrest. And I'm like, for what? And they're like, battery. And I'm like, huh? So I find out and I've never been charged with anything. So they actually gave me, it was a friend of mine, he was a sheriff, gave me the copy of the police report because the court system and the police department would not give it to me. So I got a copy of the police report, which indeed stated no charges be filed. They recommended both parties curb issues, but no probable cause affidavit, So then I started doing some digging to find out why the police didn't do anything. And I found out there was no court minutes for this protective order. The child molester was only interviewed by Department of Child Services, not even the head detective on the case. And in fact, the two people that were trying to prosecute me, Detective Mark Wagner and then Sergeant Hartley, actually watched my daughter's forensic interview at the place that was not accredited to even do a forensic interview, were the same ones that denied to take the report for the violation of the protective order for the guy filming my daughter. Were trying to prosecute me for a battery charge on the child molester's wife. So when I found that out, I found out the prosecutor, Brent Eaton, actually owns the forensic interview place where my daughter had the forensic interview that was not accredited. He also owns a drug rehab and a clearinghouse and has a little child sex trafficking ring going on. And then I uncovered one in Evansville, Indiana as well. So I started exposing that stuff online, and then I started being gang stalked pretty bad. I documented all of this stuff that the police were coming at me, and it was for a misdemeanor warrant. And then on May the 29th, 2023, I was at the park with my daughter and my son, who's 4. My daughter's 13 now. And this man came up in an unmarked car, not marked in clothes. And he was saying, hey. And I'm like, I don't have to talk to you. And my daughter looked at me like with the fear of God in her eyes. And I'm like, well, let's just get Colton and we'll walk back. And I was in my bikini because it was Labor Day, so the pool was supposed to open, but it didn't open. So anyways, so we walked back the back way home, and I could still like feel somebody behind me, and he's still not saying anything. And I'm like, you know, I actually had my weapon on me because I have my license to carry, and I showed it to him like, get away from us. I thought we were being kidnapped. And so then come 22 police officers later and have a AR-15 to my head and a barking dog a foot away from my face, arresting me. And then they took me. I begged them to call 911. They told me no at first, that I deserved this. And then my kids were going to foster care. They finally called 911, and 911 came to check me out. They insisted that I ride with the police to the hospital. So I rode in the front of the police car, handcuffed to the hospital, and then got to the hospital. They drugged me and told me if I kept telling them I didn't want to give them a statement. And they told me I didn't feel comfortable because I was going in and out of consciousness. And they kept telling me if I did not give them a statement on their body cams, that my kids were going to go to foster care. So finally, I gave them a statement. I'm not sure what I said or what I didn't say in that statement, to be honest with you, because I was going in and out of consciousness. I also don't remember the ride to jail because I was going in and out of consciousness, and I did ride. They put me again in the front of the police car, handcuffed, where obviously there's no cameras. Why, I don't know. So I was held for 30 days. And then they transported me on the misdemeanor warrant that was actually expired. And so they shouldn't have even transported me on this warrant to the other jail.
I just wanted to, I interviewed Lauren probably about 5 times talking about this. So I had some familiarity. There's a couple of things that I wanted to add that need to be known. Brent Eaton, the lead prosecutor, was exposed in this child sex trafficking ring before any charges came. So this was retaliatory. The detectives that were dealing with this, like the Wagner, he was the one who sent her to her daughter to a forensic interview place that was not licensed. So he knew that this was some place that they should have never went. So he intentionally did something to derail the investigation at the beginning to protect the pedophile.
Yeah, exactly.
So then now this same investigator is now coming after her for some charges after the child sex trafficking ring is exposed. Now, after all these police officers are coming up to her and creating a circumstance for her to be afraid. Now the guys came up unannounced. So she's now panicked, going, somebody's coming after me. And so now they have a gun pointed at her head. She's got 22 officers there. They have dogs barking by her head. And he's threatening to shoot her, yelling commands at her that are contradictory, so that if she moves, she gets shot. And is doing this for an extended period of time. This is torture. And then takes her into the car in the front seat with a man when she's wearing a bikini and surrounded by 22 large men. She's 5'2", 110 pounds, soaking wet. Now goes to the hospital. They drug her. And now about 12 of these men are coming in and out and coercing her with her children, being taken while she's slipping in and out of consciousness, barely, in a bikini around men that have just tortured her. And then they get her, coerce her into having a statement on body cam by the lone female that comes in after, like she's her friend, and then extracts information from her, takes her to jail, doesn't remember the ride, and then now you see this whole process of the court hearing going on. Yes, this is absolutely disgusting. 100%. Go ahead.
Yeah, the amount of corruption, my God. I mean, and Lauren, I've got a recording here of the video that you did. You want to explain to the audience before I play this video?
So this is actually just one of the times. So the cops were coming from 2 counties over to serve a misdemeanor warrant, and I have no prior history of convictions or anything like that. So this is one of the few times that they came unannounced, covering my cameras for over, I think, 30 minutes. total.
Let me see if I can play this for the audience.
Okay.
Nothing but doorbell rings. And no police cars out. You guys have to listen to this one.
Search warrant.
Really? He lied. They didn't have a search warrant. Listen. This is the first announcement. It is 10:38.
Sheriff's Office warrant. I know you're inside. Just come on out. If not, we'll apply for a search warrant.
If not, we will apply for a search warrant. Wait a second. Stop. Game over.
I mean, there you go right there. I mean,
So they were there. They came, I believe they started coming at 10:25. So that was at 10:38 when he first said search warrant, search warrant. If you don't come out, we're going to apply for a search warrant. But the whole time they were covering the camera. This was a Thursday night on a school night. And I've got 2 children. So my kids were literally laying underneath the coffee table because we had no idea who it was.
and in the story you just shared with the audience, with the law enforcement and how they acted, the officer never once ID'd himself, correct?
Correct.
So anybody that understands the law knows that law enforcement has to not only announce who they are, they have to show identification.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yes.
And with that being said, I mean, a normal mother would do exactly what you did.
Yeah. And they did this multiple times. I mean, this wasn't the first time that they covered my camera. It was probably the 7th or the 8th time that they had came unannounced and covered my camera, whether it was daylight or nighttime.
I just wanted to add in there. So if the police are doing this to you and you're a woman and you've got 2 children and then you're at the park and you have some unknown man coming up to you and your children that doesn't announce himself as law enforcement, you're terrified. And the law enforcement are doing this to you.
Yeah.
You think that you're going to be like, can I get the law enforcement who's doing this to me to come and help me? And so forth. So the circumstances are being created so that she would have reacted. And if she had reacted, they would have shot her dead on that spot. That's what they were hoping for. Yeah.
My daughter actually said that night after they left, Mom, and she's 13 at the time, Mom, do you really think if we called the police and it was a real emergency that they'd come help us? And I'm like, that's just a sad way to have a 13-year-old look at law enforcement to begin with, especially in the small county that we live in. There's usually no crime there.
You got to consider the amount of stuff your daughter's witnessed and everything else. And I'm not surprised that your daughter would ask you that kind of a question.
No, me neither. I just feel bad for her because of that. I never was taught to think that way, about them. And you hope that they'll call for help, but you hope that they'll actually do something, I guess, about it.
Well, that's what we're taught always when I was growing up. We're taught, if you got an issue, dial 911 first and then call home.
Right.
But nowadays, it's like, who are you going to get on the other end when you dial 911?
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Are they going to show up to help you, or are they going to show up to shoot you, or are they going to show up,
to take your kids?
Your kids. Nowadays, none of us know. I mean, we've seen it where some guy was ordered to lay down on the floor. This is at a big popular place. I think it was actually in Las Vegas. He was ordered to lay down on the floor, put his hands out. Law enforcement said if he moved at all, they would shoot. He was down on his knees trying to pull up his pants that were about down on him, that came down on him, and they just gunned him down. He had no gun, no nothing. And this was all over social media and everything else for quite some time. And again, we've got good law enforcement out there and we've got bad ones. The thing is, who do we know is good and bad anymore?
Yeah, and they, when he told me, he's like, put your hands up, put your hands down, put your hands up. And I'm like, you just told me to put them down. And he's like, I know, I'm sorry, I'm effing sorry. And he's like, you move, I'll kill you, bitch, I'll kill you. I mean, I thought I was going to be dead, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And honestly, with the amount of information you guys all have and everything else, I'm surprised any one of you guys are alive. I hate to say it that way.
It's God. It's really it.
No kidding.
The amount of stuff that you have and the evidence that you have with all the corruption, from what I've read, from what I'm looking at, I personally think you guys have been targeted as well, every one of you.
Oh yes, absolutely. Oh yes, it's very deliberate. And when I watched when Kaysha and Laura went in together and they presented the evidence, and the way that I watched it happen, I'm like, you guys need to leave. I'm like, they're gonna just come after you. Like, I mean, I expected the judge she just lost her mind and just
Absolutely.
like the actions that she took were just out of control, and that tells me that's desperation. And it's like when you have somebody that's desperate that's doing that, you don't know what they're going to do. They're the most unpredictable. And so,
Dale, what's the next steps for you right now? Is all your stuff done and over now, or
oh no, I wish it was. Right now, like I said, I filed in the Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit, and I put a petition for a writ of mandamus, and I think it's 23-1895. You can go look it up. There's the 4,000 pages that I sent into the FBI that anybody can go on Pacer and see. And then the petition where I request military assistance. But the clerk inside of there, or one of the, what's her name? Let me get the name so that people can know her name. Her name is Taylor Barton.
Did you say
Barton.
Barton?
Taylor Barton, Barton.
Yes, sir.
She decides that she was going to change the people that I had on the petition. You see, I named the Attorney General of the United States because under Title 175A, in Title 18, there's a provision for request for military assistance under certain emergencies when you're violating the biological weapons prohibition, right? Which should have been executed, but he's a traitor. So she decides to read through the petition, take other parties out, and then name them and tell me that I had to serve them. And so I called the court and I said, to hell with that. I'm not doing that. I said, you need to change that order because you read through that document and you went and changed something that I didn't put there. You don't have the authority to do that. That goes before a judge. But they don't want to put it before a judge because the clerks and the judges work together, because if the judge goes and sees that, they're screwed. And then I used Article 3, Section 3 of the Constitution as the way to get in. So now I have to go and file this in the Supreme Court under Rule 11 for writ of certiorari so the Supreme Court can overlook it. And I'm going to be filing some other documents as well because this is enough. And the Supreme Court, because it's a public court, it has to be seen there. And so we'll be working in Canada, United States, to use the court systems to flush out the dirty judges so that any law enforcement that wants to do their job, they can start getting those guys as they expose themselves, because we can't have that happen anymore. This is enough, right? Like, and then we're working with the people, like I said, that are doing the precinct strategies and the tactical civics as they go and get the citizen grand juries to get indictments for any sheriffs that want to go and grab these criminals. And then the precinct guys that are getting rid of the dirty politicians. I want to put the ones who uphold the Constitution. We're working with them and just getting the word out. And they're doing the Million Man March here in Canada on September 20th, where they're getting everybody to get up to stand up for the kids. And we need to start doing something like that in the States because our governments are working together to steal our children, and that needs to stop.
You know, I sure hope we do a Million Man March right here in the United States. I think it's needed right now. Kaysha, I'm going to ask you, how are you doing and how are you handling all this that you've been through?
Well, only by the grace of God and my father, like I said, I'm able to handle it because ultimately I think my father and I are a very wonderful team. I think we're quite unbeatable, and I think that's because we put our trust in God first. And I see that my father is doing everything that he can, and I see that God is really bringing us through each and every new obstacle that comes in our way. I trust him implicitly. I almost don't breathe without going to him first, literally. I mean, you could ask Lauren, not because I'm stupid or because I'm
Right.
controlled, but because I understand when you're a team with somebody, if that's their strength, if you're the best sniper, then I'm not going to try to be the sniper. I'm going to be like, the watch guy or something, like I don't know what other things you do in war, but I do whatever I'm good at. He does what he's good at. I
So in other
trust him.
words, you just go right where you're the strongest at.
Yeah, exactly. And I really think that a lot of women would be able to handle this stuff a lot easier if they trusted the men in their lives, like their fathers and husbands and things like that, if they're respectable, honorable, God-fearing men, because then they wouldn't be as in danger. Right now they try to separate everybody in this process, is try to separate me from my father, try to force me not to have a relationship with him, and force me not to listen to his advice. And those were the very people who were raping me and beating me, trying to traffic me and holding me gunpoint, drugging everything. And so it was cemented in my mind even more, the more people tried to do this and attack me, that this was the solution to safety. And I've seen predators talk about it online before, saying that they go after people whose children are separated from fathers and that have no God in their life, and then have little children who are friends who are the same like them, because then they'll groom their friends into the same behavior. So, I always push to women all the time, if you have a good man in your life, to trust him. And it might not always make sense. My dad tells me things all day, every day that don't make sense. But I'm like, you know what? If it makes sense to you and it's working, man, just tell me and I'll do it. You're making my brain bleed. Don't explain it. I'll just do it. Because,
that's
I
what us
Stop
do.
with the word.
yeah,
That's
stop
what
with
us
all the words,
dads
just tell me and I'll do it. And
Yeah.
this is what they want to go away from. And this is, a lot of women are standing up right now. And it doesn't mean I don't have hard days. I'm a human, I have feelings, but I'm able to reason through a lot of this better, because fathers, they bring you like 40,000 feet in the air, help you look at the equation, analyze it from a different perspective, and then solve it, right? And so I have that constant help, and then I don't have to worry about having to go through the emotional turmoil, the spiral of not knowing what to do. And women standing up alone is why we're still being trafficked, because we don't have men doing the solutions, like my dad. Go ahead, Dad. Sorry.
But the men also have to listen to what the women are telling them, because I know I'm not a woman, and if my daughter's telling me something about a woman, or Laura's telling me something about a woman, I hear what they have to say, because I see women interacting, I don't even know what the hell they're doing. I know they're doing something important, but I can't describe it because I don't know how that works.
Kaysha,
Right?
I'm going to ask you a very tough question for me to ask, and you don't even have to answer it. But would you share with us how many times you had been raped?
Well, the one person that was doing it, the dual citizen, Robert A. Cannon, he did a couple times in Canada, but when I crossed the border, when I got out of the detention, it was, I think, once in South Carolina, and then in Austin, Texas, when I was sent there. He just started trying to force himself, exposing to me and things like that. So never physical touch, because I kept calling my dad at that point. I was just so overwhelmed. I was like, Dad. And then my dad talked to him and he confessed what was going on. And my dad was like, that's it. Call the police. You're done. The guy that I was forced to live with, he was doing things when I was drugged and blacking out. I can't even tell you how many times things were happening that way, but countless times he hit me. Multiple times he pulled the gun on me. There's too many instances of things that happened, and too many, of course, when I was under a certain uh, influence of whatever I was given. I don't even know what it was, but there was times I was vomiting blood, and blacking out. I don't remember everything.
The reason why I'm asking you this question is because a lot of these children and women coming through the border down here, they have come through the border. I'll say it like it is. They just smelled like semen coming through the border. The children's story that they have given us that's come through the border, most of these children have had up to 100 different DNAs in them. I mean, that's how many times they were raped by different men down there on the border. And I mean, I'm talking the cartel, even God knows what's happening on American soil as well. Once they're detained with the government. But this is happening every day. And that's
They
why
need the death penalty. That's it.
Absolutely. And that's what I keep telling everybody that.
That's exactly why I keep saying that these people, these children and these women, they need men, because a lot of the things that people were trying to do to me, they didn't get away with because I called my dad right away when I was aware of what was going on. When I wasn't aware, it was too late for me. I took consequences of what I didn't understand. But a lot of people were trying to sell me to prostitution and also sell me to military people for sexual exploitation and financial. And I called my dad and I told him, and my dad helped me mitigate the situation. But I didn't get out unscathed every time, but he made a huge difference. I'm alive for this reason.
This is
Dale, from what I hear right here, you're an awesome father, and I'm honored to know you.
Thank you. I mean, that's really God. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, right? Like, it's God that kept me from losing my mind, because if it wasn't for God, this is how you make men kill themselves and go crazy. Like, you take the one child that's little and then the other one, and then it was at the point that if I did too much for one, then the other one would die. And it was very sick and very disgusting. And the people that did this, they need to get what's coming to them. And we need to make sure that this kind of filth never happens to any child again. And this is the one thing I prayed to God, is that this never happens to another child, because this is absolutely disgusting that they would do this.
I truly believe that's probably why it's been written in the scriptures, an eye for an eye. I mean, I'm not saying become vigilantes. I'm just saying, I think, that was spot on. Our children are constantly being trafficked nowadays. The amount of human trafficking has risen over 1,000%. And so many people just are blind to it. It's like, if it's not happening to them or their family, why worry about it? Well, sooner or later, it can very well affect all families.
It's going to. This filth that
Especially
they're pushing.
Yes. I mean, and you cut your grass wrong someday, and Department of Child Services shows up at your door and takes your kids for no reason. I mean, it can happen to anybody.
The filth that they're pushing in the schools that they call under the transgender agenda, this is 100% pedophilia. And this is how they're going to start stealing people's children. And they're completely unaware that if you don't go along with the program, they're just going to come in and steal your children. Like what they're doing in California, they're using state legislatures to set up child trafficking networks. They're using the same tactics as pedophiles and child sex traffickers in the schools to normalize this filth. And what are they doing? They're trafficking your children in front of your eyes using your tax dollars, and then they're going to steal your children using these child protective services if you don't comply.
Or if you don't comply with the school board and stuff, next thing you know, they call in the law
I was
enforcement
homeschooling my daughter
and everybody else in the book to come after you. And I mean, when does American people say enough is enough? And not just America. I mean, look what happened with you guys. And you're actually on the Canadian side at the time.
Oh, yes.
Just the amount of corruption on both sides. I mean, it's unreal what's happening.
I think they're getting pissed. They're getting pissed off in Canada because parents are getting arrested already, and they're doing this like crazy. Like, as bad as in the States domestically, it's way worse here, and they're stealing children left, right, and center. They're flagrantly. I had to stop in a court hearing. I told the judge, I said, what are you doing? I said, what you're doing here is a crime. They literally held a woman. They got a court order saying that she couldn't call the police on her ex-husband who was raping her 2 daughters and had raped her and beat her. And they said that even if there was a crime in progress, she couldn't call 911. And I said to the judge, I said, that is how you traffic human beings. And you can't do this in the court. I told the judge, I'm going to call the police. And I did. Because you can't do that filth. I don't care where you are. And now people need to start doing that because this is absolutely insane. Yeah. Judges are trafficking children.
Guys, I love having you on my show tonight. This was only scheduled for an hour for tonight. And looks like we've got about 4 minutes left, 4 minutes and 40 seconds. I just want to say to both of you, Kaysha, Lauren, and Dale, I mean, it's an honor having you guys here tonight. Anything that we can do, let me know as well. And looking forward to also working with you guys and helping put a stop to this corruption.
Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely.
And God bless you guys. You're going to be in my prayers, asking all of America to pray for you as well. And just to see justice served against this kind of a corrupt government. It needs
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It needs to come to an end. So, anything else any of you like to add to this?
I'll just add quickly, do something, support it. I mean, we've got, we've been working with Switch to USA to get, the Patriot products instead of funding the people that are stealing your children and killing you. And, we have some stuff at the CARES Project. We've got a website. I'm at, you can find me at DJS Richardson on Twitter. And at the CARES Project, there's links there if you want to support. Many ways to support, get the information out. There's packages and so forth. We just want the information in the hands of people. And I want to teach people how they can defend themselves against a corrupt government so that they can't steal your children, man. That's really it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the link for that is actually switch to USA .com / / save our children. So save the children. Switch to USA.com / save the children. And yeah, we all use the products and they're great. It ultimately stopping to fund the people who are trafficking the children and the people in this country, our families, destroying us. So I would say, yeah, please share everything. And if you need help, if you've experienced something similar, please reach out to us on the CARES Project, and we'll try to give you a voice to speak on our show. And my dad will try to help you on the back end with filing some complaints. A lot of this is not isolated events. I think ultimately they're trying to traffic everybody, even the people in this country across the border, because they tried to, even the people who were trafficking me, the actual citizens, kept trying to force me across the border to Mexico. So there's something weird going on. We're all aware of this. And so please reach out to us at the CARES Project. That's KARIS. It's actually my sister's name. She's here, CARES.
Awesome.
She's here. But anyways, thank you so much, Jonathan, for having us on your show, sir. It's much appreciated.
All right, guys. This is my first time using this format right here for our studio. So hopefully we got through this just fine. It looks like we did.
Yes, I think so.
We'll get better at this as we get more familiar with this setup. And other than that, guys, God bless you guys. Love you guys. And we'll do all we can to help support the cause as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Bye.
We'll see you next time.
All right.
Bye.
All right. This is Johnathon Alexander reporting live with livebordernews.com. And again, guys, you can reach out to these guys and help support what they're doing as well. And just, you guys see something out there that looks suspicious or something, just keep your eye on it, because right now human trafficking, it's happening all across America, and it's actually it's happening all across the world, not just America. So anyways, guys, appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. God bless all of you.
Thank you. Bye.